Hi, Ingrid Crepeau again, and today we're going to talk about needles. Now, when I was in high school, my French grandmother lived 2 doors down from an upholsterer, an old guy who was really mad because none of his children were interested in his business. But I was interested because I could see there were all kinds of things he knew that would be helpful for me, whether I wanted to upholster furniture or make puppets. This is one of them that I'd like to share with you today. This is an upholsterer's 18-inch needle, and boy, is it handy. Now, it's a very special needle. They come round or they come with what's called a square point. I don't know why it's called square. There's not a right angle in it. But if you notice, when I twirl the round needle and I twirl the square point needle, can you see there are flat edges? There are 3 flat edges and 3 flat places and 3 flat edges. That makes this needle really, really sharp. It was invented originally for the veterinarian business, and because, face it, sewing up a horse is a little tougher than sewing fabric. So, this needle has just saved me over and over again. One of the things, because it is so sharp, it goes right through the kind of foam we love to use with ease. But of course, upholsterers use this kind of foam. Now, the wonderful thing I forgot to show you about this needle, look, it's pointy on both ends. That's kind of weird, but it's so handy because you can actually use this like a short needle. Instead of sticking it all the way through the foam, you just stick the back end in. Then you can thread it up. Now, of course, I'm doing this left-handed and I'm right-handed, but yeah, it works. Here we go. Pulled right through. This really saved my hide because I am the mascot keeper for the the Nationals baseball team. I work on their racing presidents. Every winter I refurbish them. Every winter I have to replace all of George Washington's hair and all of Thomas Jefferson's hair, and they have these ponytails down the back. This is a picture, so you know what I'm talking about. This is the presidents about to dance. They dance one night every year in the Nutcracker with the Washington Ballet, and yes, they are wearing tutus. I made the tutus, 440 yards of tulle. It was such a mess. I had tulle coming out of my everywhere. Anyway, so this needle, I just simply stick in the back of George or Tom's head, go inside, thread the needle with a button, pull it through, then I can tie it to the bow. Very, very, very handy needle for me. Now, of course, upholsterers use it for those buttons in furniture. This is one of my dummy thrones. You see, it's a little tiny lightweight chair that goes up on a stand, a microphone stand. You can see the flange in there that it goes up on. And when you screw it onto the little flange, the ventriloquist will take their dummy and sit it in the chair like that. But what this needle is good for is the traditional use for the needle. I take that button, thread the string on it through this needle, and it goes all the way through the arm and ties off in the back right there. So an actual use for the proper upholstery use. But what I really love is using it on puppets. I've strung marionettes with it, and this guy is a brand new puppet. Yep, not quite finished yet. A work in progress. But look at this. These arms are put on with a heavy, heavy, heavy-duty thread, and the needle will go all the way through the arms and through the body, so I can tie a button here and a button here, and then sew the fur fabric up around it. So that's how he can have very flexible arms that they can move around. Yep, I am flexible. Okay. Now, the other needle that I learned from this wonderful man is the curve needle. See that? My little smiley face up there? But of course, this is the size I use right here. This is a wonderful needle. Can you see that there? It is so useful. First of all, I'll show you what upholsterers do. Now, this part of the chair comes off, so it fits in a small suitcase. But it has a special stitch called a slip stitch that upholsterers use to put it all together. The first thing I do is I take the fabric on the front and glue it around to the foam. Then I take a second piece of fabric, put it on the back, and stitch that on with a curved needle and a slip stitch. You take a piece of one side of the seam, and then you take a piece of the other side of the seam. Now, there are great tutorials on the internet showing how to do this stitch. It's called a slip stitch, S-L-I-P, and it's easy to learn. Now, but a curved needle can be awkward. First time you pick one up and try to use it, you will kind of go like, I don't know. But keep practicing. It is worth knowing how to do, especially with fur fabric. Back to my puppy dog. He has a tail here that's a traditional puppet thing that lots of you do. There's a screen door spring in his tail, so it just keeps constantly moving. And I have a terrible time stitching fabric on a machine into a tube and then turning the tube so that the fur side is out. I don't know why it's so hard, but it just drives me crazy. I have found it easier to stitch it on with my wonderful curved needle. So I just wrap the fur around and I just do a slip stitch right up the tail and to the body. And it's better than a flat or straight needle for me, because straight needles get caught in the fur and you end up pulling fur out and it's frustrating. And the curved needle actually just does wonders on fur. And then if you get the fur caught in the seam, you just kind of pull it out like that and you won't even see the seam. Now, the most important use for me of the curved needle is the neck. There's nothing that's more frustrating to me when I used to try to flat pattern the whole thing. So I'd stitch it all in the machine and then pull it onto the fur. And inevitably, the neck would really restrict motion. So I put the neck on by hand. It just makes my life so much better. I'll sew it at the top with it stretched to the maximum stretch, then I'll sew some at the bottom so that I can keep that wonderful movement, which gives the puppet so much expression. Yep, I'm expressive, especially on mouths. Boy, there's nothing worse than you get the neck stitched onto the mouth, or you try to do this in one piece, and then it interferes with how the mouth opens. Nope, not me. Also, ears. It's also very good for sewing on ears afterwards. I like sewing rather than glue because my puppets are heavy enough. Hot glue just adds weight. So there's my puppy dog. Now, where to get this stuff? Go to any upholsterer's supply sites. There's a lot of good ones on the net. But the only kind of needle you should ever buy is an Osborne, O-S-B-O-R-N-E. Unless you know a veterinarian. I dated a veterinarian in college, and he gave me a couple of vet needles. Oh, these were really nice. Better steel, sharper point, but then we broke up, so that was the end of that. But these needles come in different sizes. This is my favorite size. It's a very thin wire. It's actually a size 21 as far as the gauge. That's the kind of wire that makes the thickness. And then it also goes by size. So this is like a, I think it's an 18 and a 2.5 inch curve, but which measures from point to end. But those are the most useful sizes I have. As for this one up here, I hardly ever use it. But every once in a while, it really saves my butt. Now, this is the kind of thread I use, also from Upholstery Supply. It's actually called upholsterer's hand sewing thread. This seam right along here is done with this thread. Probably wasn't even green. It probably was sewn blue. I'm out of green. But this is really handy if you ever need tough sewing upholsterer's hand sewing thread. Well, I think that's it for now. Bye, everybody. Thanks for watching.